Hey everybody, and welcome back to another lecture with Coding with Roby. And in this lecture, we're going to set up our database and tables for our PostgreSQL database. So there's two ways we can go about this. You can also check out the repository, and you can see in one of my folders, I have a Postgres folder, which is going to have the SQL script. Or you can just continue and watch along with me, and we can just type in the SQL script that we need to write and move forward with there. But regardless, we're going to start with right-clicking on servers. So if you do not have this, we're going to create a servers group, which is right-click, create servers group. If you already have servers, you're going to say create server. And here it says name cannot be empty. I'm going to name our server to do application server. And then after you type this in, head over to connection, where we need to say a host name or address. And right here, just type in localhost. So our host name and address is localhost, and our port is 5432. And then where it says password, we need to type in a password. So I'm going to use test1234 exclamation mark, but feel free to use whatever password you want. And after you do all that, click save. And this will create a server within our PostgreSQL. Now, one thing to check is now within our to-do application server, it might say you have a database. For me, it's going to say Postgres. I'm going to create a different database, but first I'm going to look at login and group roles. This Postgres, I'm going to right click and say properties. This is the super user that I had to create during download and installation. If you have not created a super user for whatever reason, just make sure you right click, create login group, fill out a name, and then go over to privileges and click all of these to be true. And then save. And it should look very similar to our current Postgres super user. So general name is Postgres with privileges of all true. Once we verify that's created, let's go into our database. So this one is indicating that this automatically created one database for me, Postgres. I'm going to ignore that for now and just create a new database. So I'm going to say create database, and I'm going to call this to-do application database. And we can kind of click through these, but overall, this is all we need. And the owner is going to be the user within the login, so the super user. Okay, so now it's going to come up and look like it's not connected. Just right click, and I believe if you just right click, it's going to come connected, or you can just right click and say connected. And it's going to say it's already connected because it automatically connected, but in case it did not connect. All right, now if we go down to our schemas and we look at our tables are going to be empty. So that's the first thing we need to do is create tables. We can look up here where it says Query Tool, and we can click Query Tool. This will open up an editor on Postgres on how we can write a query. And now the first thing we're going to write is drop table if exists users. And this is going to drop the table users if it already exists, which means delete the table and then recreate it. And I'm doing this just so it's an easy setup for everybody. But at the same time, if you already have data in a table called users, it's going to be deleted. So just FYI on that. After drop table if exists users, I'm going to say create table users with two parentheses and a semicolon. Inside here, I'm going to say ID is serial. And now serial in Postgres just means it's going to be an ID with auto increment features and everything we kind of want a primary key to have. And they composed all this in one thing called serial. We also want to create an email with a varchar of 200, default to null. We want a username varchar 45 default to null. First underscore name, varchar 45 default to null. Last name, varchar 45 default to null. Hashed password, varchar 200 default to null. Is active as a boolean default to null. In here, we're going to label our primary key as the ID. And now right under users, we're going to say drop table if exists to-dos. And this is doing the exact same thing as the users table, but for holding to-dos. In here, we're going to say create table to-dos. Two parentheses. ID is serial. Title, varchar 200 default to null. Description, varchar 200 default to null. Priority is going to be an integer, default to null. Complete is going to be a boolean, default to null. And then owner ID is going to be an integer, which is also default to null. And now our primary key for this table is going to be our ID. However, we're going to say our foreign key is going to be our owner ID column, which references our user's ID. All right, from here, let's scroll up until we can see this execute button. Let's click that. And let's see what it says. The table users does not exist, skipping table to-dos does not exist, skipping, and then create table. So now we just kind of have to refresh some things to make these tables show up. I refresh the public directory that's above tables. And now if we say we want to create a new query, we can say select all from to-dos. And if we run this, we're going to see that we get our table of ID, title, description, priority, complete, and owner ID, but nothing inside. And also if we type in users and run this, we're going to get the ID, email, username, first name, last name, hash password, and is active. And there we have it. We created our tables in PostgreSQL. Now there's no data inside it yet, and we will be adding data in a future lecture. But for right now, congratulations, we have Postgres installed with our tables within a database. This wraps up this lecture, and I will see you in the next video.